All right, awesome. So to kick things off, will you just introduce yourself to the audience and give a little context into you, why you're here, what you do, how you started this journey as an artist?
Yeah, so I am Daphne Vantine. I am just about to be 29. So I've been post grad in the adult world for, I guess, 6, 7 years now. And I have just been really a lifelong creative, but it wasn't something that I really like took seriously until probably the last 2 years. So, to give you some background, I'm based in Medford, Massachusetts now, which is about 5 miles north of Boston. But I grew up on Cape Cod, which for anyone listening, like you might have heard of Cape Cod before, but it's just a peninsula in southern Massachusetts, very summery vacation land type of place to grow up. So I wanted to get out of there really fast and get out of
Yeah.
Massachusetts when I was going to college. So I decided to go to the University of Delaware, which was an absolutely amazing experience. Delaware probably makes no sense to most people, and to this day, it doesn't make a lot of sense to me as a state. But it is an amazing university, and I met like my best friends there, and I was very involved with the entrepreneurship program there because I was raised by two entrepreneurs. And while I saw the struggles of them running their own business and how hard it is to be your own boss and, have your partner be their own boss as well, I saw how hard that life was, but I still think it was like ingrained in me to be creative and to have that entrepreneurial spirit. So I went through college with the idea that yeah, it would be great to one day get to that point. But in the meantime, I want to just build these business skills, build my creative skills, and be an entrepreneurial asset to a company. And then maybe one day I'll get the courage or the means to go out on my own.
Mhm.
But I never really like exactly knew what that was. Art has always been like a part of my identity for sure, but I was definitely not going to be like majoring in art in college. That was just an absolute no-go.
Mhm.
And I think because I was like, I need to have like a practical degree, I need to be a marketable, a candidate as a senior in college. Like I need a job, right away, which is what I did. I did minor in something called integrated design, which just allowed me to take some like design and art classes, which was like honestly my favorite classes of college. So that probably should have been a sign that I should have put a little bit more emphasis on art. But it was always a creative. I've
Mhm.
been a painting, I've been knitting, I've been sewing. Like I'm just one of those kids that like could not stop creating and always had some sort of project. So anyway, I flash forward like 5 years, I worked in sales for tech companies. Two mainly. One of them was the majority of that, about 4.5 years of the 5 years. So I was in sales and I did really well, honestly. Like I feel like women don't toot their own horn enough, but like when I left, I had brought in the most money as a salesperson in this company's history. Like
Okay.
in that role, in particular, in the account executive role. So like at the time, I'm sure someone's broken my record, but at the time I had brought in the most monthly recurring revenue as a salesperson. So like I was really good at it, but it really I knew in my heart that it was just not a sustainable path for me. I was always just beaten down emotionally by myself. Like it wasn't anything that inflicted upon me. It was just truly like, I could be doing better. I could be
Mhm.
making more money. There's always a moving target. And every month it just resets and you're just like back at zero. So anyway, I had been thinking for like the last year before I quit that like I really want to do something creative. I really think this is the time for me to just reinvent myself. And so I started looking into like graphic design and like ways I could maybe move out of the sales role, but still have the consistency of working at this company. And so I did some like a little research there and I just got nowhere. I'm like, I don't have time to figure out how to become an entirely new person
Yeah.
while I'm also doing this really demanding job. Um, so anyway, I basically quit. Like I just one day was like, I need to pursue my art. I had been doing it for, I mean, on and off, I had been selling artwork for about 7 years, like since college, but it was like very sporadic and very more recently around the time I quit, I had taken up gouache paint, which just truly like rocked my world. I was so enthralled with it. And right around that time, I was just so burnt out. And I'm like, I can't continue to feel this much like anger and rage and just like a little bit of depression, lots of anxiety. I can't continue like this. And so in August of 2023, so just about like 14 or so months ago, I just made the decision like, I just got to walk away. I have no plan. I just have to remove myself because if I keep doing this, like I'm going to lose myself and continue to destroy my mental health. So, anyway, I'm going to pause there because I think I've been talking for 10 minutes and I need a water break.
Yes, no, please pause. I want to also jump in and say one, I think we're cut from the same cloth. I'm also about to be 29. Was that knitting, like never was sitting still, always doing a craft kid. And so it's so interesting. I think a lot of artists can probably resonate with that sentiment of like we've always been creative, but there is this feeling of like I need to be marketable. I need to take the safer route. And so it's probably even, and I want to hear kind of the next part of your story. Like it was probably really hard for you to take that leap, but you had this calling, especially since you were doing so well at your job. It'd be one thing if you're like, I hate my job, I'm not doing well, I'm not making enough money, like, whatever negative thoughts can come with that, but you're kind of thriving from an outside perspective. So tell me what happened next. So you quit your job, you had this immense calling to be an artist, then what?
Yeah. Well, I wouldn't even say it was like I want to say that I didn't quit like to pursue my art. Like
Hmm.
I quit because I really felt like I had no choice. Like it was like I'm a pretty happy-go-lucky person, like very optimistic, glass half full kind of person. And I was just angry and I just felt like this is not who I should be. So I really did not have a plan. I didn't even know if I wanted to pursue my art. It was like I wasn't allowing myself to really dream. I was just like, this has got to end. I don't know what's coming next, but like
Yeah.
this has to end. And I'm just gonna take a sabbatical and I don't know. I had no plan truly. And probably about like 2 weeks into that sabbatical, I started thinking like, oh, I just really want to do my art. I just really want to be my own boss. And I had told myself, maybe when I'm like in my 40s, I've established myself more, like maybe I'll do it then. And I'm like, well, I could just do it now. Like I could just try it. And so basically it was kind of a honeymoon phase, I would say. I was extremely like dreamer land, like so optimistic, so excited for the future. And like I still am, but at that time it was just such a magical time where
Hmm.
I like just the world was just truly my oyster and I felt so free. And also like, and I still am this way now, but like I have no debt, thankfully. Um, I paid off my student loans a couple years ago. I don't have a house, like I don't have a mortgage, and I don't have kids. So I just felt like now is the time to like try and figure this out.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, that's what kind of happened next. And then, I quickly, thankfully the holiday season rolled right around and I'd already gotten into somewhat of a like habit of doing art markets. And so I just like was like, hey, I have all this time. Like I'm gonna go dive headfirst into the holiday season. And that was awesome being in Boston and being at art markets selling my prints and greeting cards is what I kind of focused on at that time and to this day. And that just was like a huge rocket launch. But then there was also a big crash after that, which I'm sure you're very aware of with the post-holiday slump.
Yeah. So how did you okay, so you jump into your career, you're in kind of this honeymoon phase, you go into the holidays, things are just going pretty well, it sounds like from the beginning.
Mhm.
Then there's the post-holiday slump, which I think many artists have experienced and know about. How did your mindset shift, or were you still like, this is great, we're gonna power through? Like, how are you thinking about, okay, there's some shifts in my business. What was your plan? What was going through your head?
Yeah, I think it's funny, I've been working on some, like, content and blog posts around, like, being at this 1-year mark. I'm a little past it at this point, but
Mhm.
been thinking a lot about that time, and sales definitely just fell off a cliff, and I think I expected, like, "Oh, if I build it, they'll come," like, I made a website, like, I have an Etsy shop, I'm working on my online store, like, of course I'll get people to come, and, like, that just wasn't the case, like, you really have to put a lot of effort into this, and it also takes time to build an audience. So, I think my mindset was definitely a little bit of, like, a reality check, I'd say, is what I was experiencing at that time. But then also, like, keeping in mind that, any business like this, any artistic venture, like, it's you just gotta be patient. Like, this is not Rome was not built in a day, So
Right.
I think I was still staying optimistic, and I still am, but, like, I think the rose-colored glasses kinda came off in the winter, and I started to realize, like, okay, this is the type of business where you do have these really low valleys and high peaks, and you gotta figure out what you're gonna do in those times, not only to make money, but, like, to keep yourself sane. So, that's kinda still what I'm working on to this
Yeah.
day.
Well, I'd love to kind of explore that more, but I want to touch on something you said. You're doing blog posts and you're creating content. So you've been at this for a little over a year. What is your marketing strategy? How are you reaching your customer? What are different things you're experimenting with, and maybe what's working and what's not?
Yeah, I still don't know exactly what's working, to be honest
Hmm.
with you. I think that to give folks a background on, like, what I actually do for art as well.
Hmm.
I work with gouache almost primarily. I've done a little colored pencil, but gouache is what I'm currently completely enveloped in. I just love it. And I've done some landscapes, I've done some botanicals, some commissions, things like that. So, anyway, I feel like the way that I'm growing right now is by people seeing, what I've done and, like, requesting more of that. So, when I say, like, what's working, I think when people see, oh, I did a commission for, like, a wedding bouquet,
Hmm.
just doing one of those things has gotten me, like, another client as a result. So
Hmm.
I think sharing my work and, like, really talking about it, really explaining the process, like, so far I have seen, like, a return on investment from that. um, I also have been doing a consistent newsletter, which I'm really thankful for because I feel like that's all I hear from, like, people like you who, like, coach artists and, like, people who coach small business owners are like, you need an email list. Like, don't rely on your Instagram followers. Like, those people aren't loyal to you. Your email subscribers are loyal to you. So, really from day one, I've been bringing a clipboard to my art markets, and I actually do a raffle where anyone who signs up that day gets entered for a free print. And it's my
Awesome.
smallest print, so it's, like, not a huge, like, investment of mine, but I feel like it just gets people to, like, they see, potential upside for subscribing, which hopefully the upside would be just, like, to follow my work, but, like,
Yes.
whatever, like, it still gets me a lot of names. So I'll get, like, 20 names a day, which I think is, like, really good,
Yeah.
and I'm up to about, like, 400 email subscribers
That's
now,
great.
and I do have people tell me, like, "I love your newsletter. I love hearing what you're doing," and I've even had people say, like, "I should probably just do a newsletter for my life, like, just to stay in touch with people." So, I've definitely seen, not necessarily, like, a direct ROI on sales from that, but I know that people are affected by it and people enjoy my writing. And writing is another thing that I love to do. So I'd say that's another big thing.
Yeah, I love that you are already so invested in your newsletter. And I think, I mean, 400 people, that's great, especially, with where you are in your business. And I love the tactic of doing a raffle or doing something like interactive at a show, because I think it
Yeah.
also, obviously it's a great way to get emails, but it also gets people like talking to you versus just, put your name down and then, they walk off. So I think it's a good way for them to remember you too, because they're actually like having that conversation about, oh, like here's how you enter, here's what you do. Like you're going to be more top of mind. I'd love to know, like, what is your frequency of your newsletters and what are you actually writing? If people are coming to you and saying they love reading it, what's included?
Yeah, so I'm actually so behind. Oh, not so behind. I didn't do September's. I literally forgot. So sorry guys, but
It's okay.
I have a really I think I've actually been working on an extremely long 1 year reflection
Uh-huh.
from this business. So that's anyone who actually by the time this comes out, you'll have already read it. So I hope you guys enjoyed it. But it is a monthly thing and I always start with just kind of like a monologue of sorts of just like how I'm feeling this month. Like, what was it about? What was going through my head? What was kind of the theme of the month? Then I'll touch on what I say, like, what's on my easel. So I'll show photos of like in progress work and things that, that I'm currently working on. I'll also have a section on inspiration. So I'll like put photos in that I just took throughout the month and, saved to an album that I might paint someday. So people can start to understand like what is catching my eye and what they might see from my work later on. Always shouting out like future events that I'm working on and spotlighting commissions that I might happen to do. So it's kind of like a full circle thing.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I really love that. It's almost like a look into your journal art studio, what's going on, day in the
Yeah.
life.
Yeah.
Which I think is really interesting because I do think with the fast-paced, like social media, everything being so fast now, having a moment of longer reflection, a point for someone to stop, read, and really get to know you, I think is probably going to be so beneficial long term for your business. And it's keeping you top of mind. It sounds like you're doing like semi monthly emails. Like that's a
Yeah.
great way to keep you top of mind. Even if I don't want a commission now and I know I'm going to be on your email list, I might want one in 3 months. And so I think that's
Mhm.
really, really smart. Can we talk a little bit about what does your day to day look like? So between all these different things we've talked about that you're doing, like how do you balance, the business side, the newsletters, the social media, the marketing, all that with actually painting, creating and, commissions, all that fun stuff.
Yeah. I have like literally no balance. Like I'll just be honest with you. Like I am I'd actually love to hear your thoughts on this. I I think what I'm struggling with the most right now is managing my schedule in times when it is very quiet versus managing it when it's super busy. So when I say
Mhm.
super busy, that's like the high season of outdoor markets. This whole summer, I did 17 markets outdoors, which meant like at least like 12 to 15 of my weekends were like at, a Saturday spent outdoors, which was
Yeah.
fantastic. And so I feel like I really thrive when I'm super busy because, I have a market on Saturday. That means that I need to, get my shit together and get the car packed. And which, by the way, my car just stays packed for like
Yeah.
12 weeks straight. But like, I just need to make sure that I have all I need. I need to have things packaged up. I need to do some inventory. Once the market is over, that beginning of the week usually looks like me taking that clipboard of email signups, putting them into MailChimp, blasting out a welcome email so people, know who I am and can quickly recall like, oh, I signed up for this on Saturday and now I know who this person is emailing me. Um, so that's kind of what I do. I also do in those market seasons, I'll take all my sales from that Saturday or weekend market and early in the following week, put that into a spreadsheet and start to track, what's selling. So I've gotten into such a great habit of that. And then midweek is when I kind of get back towards creating And then by the time the end of the week comes around, it's like we're about to do it all again.
Yeah.
What I feel like is really hard now is that like I don't have events happening. We're recording this in October. So I ended my events mid-September and I won't be back at markets really until 3 weeks from now, which is when the holiday season's kicking off. So it's like this time I'm like I have plenty to do, but I don't have so much on my schedule that I can really like build, a real habit around. Um, Plus I've also been, which I'd love to kind of hear more from you because I know you talk to people like me all the time, but I'm also considering getting a part-time job just to like help with some cash flow in these slow times and just like have a more consistent schedule where I'm like, I know Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, like I gotta be here. And then the rest of the week is like for me to create.
Yeah. I think to answer kind of your first question or just to comment on it, I do think it's a lot easier. And I'm the exact same way to be productive when you have a pre prescribed schedule. Like you're like, well, I have the event. I have to kind of do everything for the event, post event. Or even like I have these meetings scheduled, like in an office job. So you're like, I have to do this work in between them. You're kind of,
Yep.
even in school, it's like you're set up if you're doing a sport, like you got to get your homework done before or after. You kind of are like being productive because you have to be. And so I
Yep.
think what's hard, and I can completely relate, like when I have completely free weeks, I'm like, what do I do with my time? Like there's so much to
Yeah.
do, but I don't know when to do it. And so I think what can be really helpful is one, like acting like your own boss and either setting meetings in your calendar, so to speak, or something I like to do is if you have creatives in your community or other people you can talk to, I like to set up like coffee dates or phone calls or just something in my day so I don't have I mean, sometimes you need a full day just to yourself, but sometimes it's nice, like if you have a full week to yourself, just to have like a coffee date in the morning. And is that, you know, productive to maybe your to-do list? Not necessarily, but it can be productive to your creativity, to your sanity. And then it's like, okay, well, at least I have something from 10 to 11. So it kind of keeps me on schedule. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
That's something that like has really benefited me is sometimes just having like a workout in the middle of the day or a meeting with someone or a phone call that I just scheduled that's kind of proactive. That can be really helpful. And I also think having in like the slower time, having obviously your to-do list, but also like some fun projects that you're just excited about that maybe will take longer to see the results or it's just something that's just for you. But I think when you're really excited about something, it's easier to dive into it. And then you're in your studio, you're in work mode and you can start checking off other tasks. So I think that's a good like entry point to start getting a little bit more organized during this time. And then to touch on what you said about a part-time job, I honestly think if you find the right fit and the hours are stable or, whatever works for your schedule, it can be wonderful. I've had so many part-time jobs when I've been building my business and I love it because it gives you that schedule that makes everything else more productive. And yes, it can be stressful at times and you have to find a job that's a good balance and a good fit, but it does take a little bit of pressure off your artwork because you are getting a little bit of cash
Mm-hmm.
flow. It can get you experience in other in other areas which can benefit your business. And I just think I'm more productive when I don't have a whole day with like I can do anything. And so I
With
don't
your
think that's
thoughts.
exactly. So I really don't think it's a bad idea at all. And even, it can be like a transition period because I know I first got out of college, had a job, then had part-time jobs while I was building the business to like get it growing and then slowly like decrease the time of the different part-time things I did to the point where I'm like, okay, now my business has grown enough and I'm fully like capable of managing my time and knowing what time I need and all of that. And so you also can kind of like ease into it that way too, because it is a huge
Yeah.
shift.
Yeah, yeah, and I think that's like I feel like I've taken such a different route from what people like from you, for example, and what people have told me to do. Like, oh, don't just like dive head first. Like, don't just like go all in. And I'm like, that's my own, like, that's just my personality. Like, I'm just like
Yeah.
a deep end, no fear, maybe somewhat in denial. Like, I'm just like all in. And so it's like, I'm now realizing that like it's also good to I also appreciate the time away from my art too. Like I've started to take up other hobbies and like invest in other creative ventures that like I'm not gonna make money yet, because
Yes.
it's like it's good to still have that and just have a little bit of a break. I've learned that like you're just not going to create your best work every day. So like
Right.
don't like I find myself sometimes staring at a piece and I'm like, this looks so bad. I can't get what I'm envisioning from my brain like to my hand and making this work. And so I think being able to step away, and that's something I'm working on now, being able to step away and like have somewhere where I just have to be and I don't have to think about my next piece. I don't have to think about this commission for 8 hours. I can just focus on like this task and kind of compartmentalize. So I think that'll be going into this second year in my business. Like that's something I'm going to be starting to scale up a little bit more. And I honestly think I'll end up being more productive at the end of the day.
Yeah, I definitely think so. And I think that the beauty of all of this is too, which is what I tell people, nothing is set in stone for forever. As you all like
Yeah.
already can see, it's like you've had this job and now you're doing this. And then if you bring in a part-time job, like in the I'm the same age as you, in the like 6 or 7 years, however long we've been out of
Yeah.
school, I've done so many different things. Like it's kind of comical how many side jobs I've had in Charleston. But
Wait, tell me more. What kind of side jobs have you
okay,
had?
I'll walk you through my journey. So first I worked for a magazine. It was an internship program. So that was like my first job out of college. They were not hiring. So I went off and applied to like a million jobs. The whole sidebar ended up starting my online art gallery. And so while I was building the gallery, because obviously it wasn't like super cash flow right in the beginning, I worked at a bar studio, just at the front desk because it was weird hours. So I could work like, 6 a.m. to 10 a.m. and then 4 p.m. to 6 p.m. So I could get a lot of that work done still in the middle of the day. I also babysat and would take care of kids after school. So they did like an after school program. So that was from like 4 to 7 p.m. or something like that on days I didn't work at the bar studio. I also worked at this jewelry market where they would sell jewelry on weekends. All of that was like at the same time. And then I kind of slowly stopped doing some of those. I worked for a kitchen remodeler for a while, kind of interior design slash remodeling. Did that for like a little bit. And then she ended up moving. So that job just ended because her business moved to Nashville. And then I worked for another interior designer for 2 years who we're such good friends and she's amazing. So like literally I've had a million different jobs, but I do think they've all helped me in different ways, just inform like being organized, making sure you're making the most of your time. But also, I look back on that period when I was waking up at 6 a.m. to work at the bar studio, picking up kids after after trying to build my business, babysitting, and then, working weekends. And I was like, okay, look how far we've come. Like, I'm so glad we're
Yeah.
not doing that anymore. Um,
Yeah.
and so it's cool to look back in those periods too. And so I think
Mhm.
there's so much to be learned at every step along the way. But I am such a proponent of a part time job if it works for you, because I really think it can help you grow your business strategically because you have that extra cash flow. So I tell
Yes. Yeah.
people being an artist is a business of patience. Like you have, like, to grow a business. I mean, any entrepreneur will tell you, like, you just have to be patient and you want to grow things right. And it's hard to do that when you are also trying to pay all your bills, but you're also trying to make like strategic investments in like marketing or, booth fees for a show. And so I think it's really helpful to have a little bit of something on the side when you're getting started, if it makes
Yeah.
sense for you.
Yeah. Yeah. That's so cool. I'm glad to hear what you were doing because I think I've like had like some ego like bullshit come in where
Yeah.
I think to myself, like, I was in corporate America for 5 years. Like, I did the waitressing, I did the babysitting, I did all of that. I scooped ice cream. Like,
Yeah.
you do all those things. And it has felt, I've been resistant because it almost feels like taking a step back. And it's like, well, and I think it's also making me admit that, like, this is still a slow burn. Like I'm not fully sustainable on like this income that
Hmm.
I'm getting from my art, even though I'm very impressed with what I've accomplished in a year. And so I think I've finally come to terms with the fact that like doing these things is not rare. Like this is just life. This is a we have to make sacrifices, and plenty of people do this even after leaving kind of that like white collar job, so to speak.
Yeah.
And also like I've begun to think of it like, wait, this is a way for me to invest in myself, because here I'm getting this money that yes, I'm working for, but like this is money that I want to call it like free money almost. And what I mean by that is like I don't have to get it from my art and invest it back into my art. I can get it
Yeah.
from somewhere else and use that to fuel my business. So I'm glad I'm coming to this realization, but it's also a little scary because I have to figure out what it is that I want to do. But I think it'll be great. I'm excited for it.
I think it will be great. And I think this is a really important conversation because I do think I can completely relate. Like every time I would have another job, I had this internal struggle of like, am I not doing enough? Is my business failing because it's not at a place where I feel like it can fully sustain me? Or why aren't things happening faster? Or, I should have just gotten a job out of college, like all my other friends that are, you know.
Yeah.
And so I can understand that like internal dialogue. And I think a lot of other people have it because I've talked to a lot of artists that have like thought about having other jobs. And I really just want to tell you and everyone else that it is okay. Like there's nothing wrong with, you're not taking a step back. There's nothing wrong with having to have something else to supplement to build the bigger project, like the bigger business. And I actually heard, I think it was on another podcast, someone was talking about when you're building your business, you have to think about it as it's like a startup, and you have to think about they made the comparison to doctors, and like doctors go to years and years and years and years of school before they ever get
Mm,
their payout. And that's kind of like what we're doing. Like the first few years, like first even 10 years of your business, like hopefully you're growing and you're learning and you're improving. But think of
yeah.
that as your education period. Like we're constantly learning, we're constantly getting better. Very few businesses and professions just come out the gate, come out of college like top notch, top level CEO, because what you're doing is essentially you went from working at a corporate job to now you're the CEO of your company, and that's a big jump to
Yeah.
make. Like MBA in a day.
Literally. That makes me feel better, Haley. Thank you
Yeah.
for, yeah, this is
No,
great.
you're doing fantastic, but it's an important topic. Well, shifting gears a little bit, I want to talk about what have been your successful moments. So you're obviously doing
Mhm.
really well. It's been a year. A lot of exciting things are happening. What have been some moments that have really stood out for you, just that have been really successful in your eyes?
Yeah. Wow, I feel like, isn't it funny how you like have to think back about like
Yeah.
what you did this year? You're like, oh my God, like what did I accomplish? Um, I think some really standout moments. I think one in particular that was mind blowing for me, which probably isn't mind blowing for a lot of artists who are a little more accomplished than me, but I had an amazing market in June in Beverly, Massachusetts, which was called Beverly Arts Fest. And it's this time when the whole like downtown just shuts down and people get to walk through like 100 different tents of art markets, I mean of artists selling at this market. And it was my first like 4-figure sales day, and just like making $1,000 in a day on your art, like when you're selling art prints, is just like you just feel like you've made it. So,
Yeah.
and that was the first time I've done that. And I think I did that one other time this summer at another event, but I've gotten to the point where like that's almost like the expectation now. Whereas like a year or two ago, I'd be floored if I made like $500 at an event. Um, and like I know the money is like relative, like it really doesn't mean a whole lot at the end of the day, but it's like still like that was huge for me. That has this summer was really a turning point because I feel like I was finding the markets where my art was resonating and finding the organizers and events that were doing a great job of bringing foot traffic to these places. I know people probably listening have done the art market scene, and there's nothing more frustrating than like showing up to a market and like no one comes.
Yeah.
Or people come and they just don't buy anything because you're in the wrong spot. And so I feel like this summer Beverly Arts Fest and some other markets that I did in downtown Boston, I just like clicked and I'm like, you know what? If I can just do that 20 times next year, like that's awesome. Let's do more of that. I also had some really great commissions that I worked on this year. The one that I'm most proud of is the first, my one of, I'm working on another one right now. So it'll be my second one, but this was my first wedding floral commission. It was actually my neighbor who learned I was an artist and wanted me to paint her wedding florals. And that is just so cool to me because it's a great way to get a commission. I love working on botanicals. So, that's two birds there, kill two birds with one stone. And
Hmm.
then in addition to that, it's also like a very marketable service. It's like something very tangible that consumers can resonate with. And like that kind of borderlines on trendy, which I don't necessarily want to do because I want people to commission me for things other than that, obviously.
Hmm.
But that was really exciting because I felt like, hey, if I can do this one time, I can get more clients this way. And it's a great way to connect with people who might not necessarily have an idea for a commission, but they got married or they know someone that got married. And so it's a great way to like, mold those two things together. So that was another big standout for me. And I'm
Yeah.
working on my second one now, and I'm struggling with it because there's a lot of flowers that I find really challenging, but I'm practicing. I'm like, I have this right here. It's like just a bunch of blobs right now, but I'm like practicing like how to paint a peony. Like I just need to do this 20 times before I like do it on the real thing. So that's another thing I'm proud of, is just like trying to be patient and
Yeah.
trying to teach myself like how do I do this?
Yeah, I love it. I mean, it's like as an artist, you're still learning on the job. And I tell people too,
Mhm.
even if you can paint a peony, sometimes you still have to warm up and remind yourself how to paint it. And so it's okay to
Yeah.
like paint all your blobs and turn them into
Yeah.
peonies, remind yourself that you're really talented, and then take it to the commission,
Yeah.
versus putting all that pressure on yourself to do it perfectly the first time. And so I really love
Yes.
that.
Yeah.
Um, on the flip side, what have been some challenges you've faced in this first year?
Yes. I was just writing this down actually yesterday because I'm like, I need to think about like what I've learned from it. I think one challenge that we did touch on was just like the peaks and valleys, like,
Yeah.
just being able to not freak out when you're not making any money. Like that is a big challenge. Another big challenge I've had is what I call like the good art days and the bad art days, which like, the good art day, you're like, damn, I am so good. Like, this first try, I just like did so well on this little piece. Wow, like this is awesome. The next day, I do something slightly similar, a little different, and it's just shit. Like, it just looks so bad. And I question if I am even allowed to call myself an artist. Like, it's just all the imposter syndrome. Like, I have the audacity to think that I can, like, actually make a living out of this. This is ridiculous. So that's another big one. And then I think another big challenge is just learning to be like patient. Like you said, like doctors and CEOs and all that, like they have years and years of on the job experience, and like I just don't have that. And so, like, for example, like with my newsletter, that is a great asset that I'm working on, but I'm not going to have 10,000 email subscribers like at the end of this year. I might have 10,000 in like 10 years. Like that just might take a while, and learning to just be okay with the fact that like none of this happens overnight. Like that's a big challenge of mine. And I think most of that is fueled by social media, which shows us that you can snap your fingers and a video can go viral or a product can go viral and your life's changed, when in the reality, like that doesn't really happen. That happens to one out of maybe 1,000 people. So I think we all have to normalize the fact that this takes a really long time. So I've actually in my blog and, in the future, I want to start like normalizing that more and helping people understand that like I'm actually working really hard. Like I'm not snapping my fingers,
Yeah.
and that it's like okay if you're also really frustrated by social media or really frustrated by not moving fast enough. So yeah, I'd say that's been a big one this year.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people can relate to that, myself included. And I think that's where things like the honesty of this podcast is really helpful, just to hear that
Mm-hmm.
a lot of these artists, even artists you really look up to that seems like it happened overnight, have been working on this for a really long time. And I've been in business for I guess 6 years, over 6 years now, and like nothing happened overnight. I still feel like I'm figuring it out. And so I love to talk about that. And I also love to like just to bring to light the emotional roller coaster that this can be too. It's not like all of a sudden you hit a certain threshold and every single day is perfect. Like I feel like I still have days that are I love my job, everything's amazing, and then I have days where I'm like, no, this is a lot and I'm stressed and I'm
Yeah.
overwhelmed, and but at the end of the day I'm doing what I love and I wouldn't trade it for anything. And so I just love to bring to light the honesty of what we all go through, because I think that's not showcased enough on
Mm-mm,
things like
not at
social
all.
media. And that's where most people get their content. And so I think that's where longer form content like videos or conversations like this are so impactful for artists, because a lot of the times we're in our own silos of our own studio and we don't know what other people are going through. And it's important to
Mm-hmm.
hear that, because it is awesome. It's a great job. We love it, but it's also okay for like not every day to be perfect.
No, no. And there's so much more that goes into it than just like painting. Like, I feel like sometimes when I talk to people, they're like, oh, that's so cool. You get to paint every day. And I'm like,
Yeah.
sometimes I don't even paint. Sometimes I'm just like working on my website and like struggling with this email and like having technical issues and working on this thing in Photoshop and trying to figure out how to scan this thing. And, it's rough, but I feel like I'm slowly learning also on like what I do enjoy doing, especially when it comes to social media. And I love talking. Like that's why I'm so glad I'm on this podcast, because I just love like audio. I love listening to podcasts. And I don't think I would make a podcast at this point, but when it comes to audio versus video, I would prefer to show up with audio than with video. Or at least than with my face in the video, because it's like then I'm like critiquing like, oh, what do I look like? Am I this
Right.
like, idyllic artist personality on Instagram? Like I don't have that pizzazz or like desire to be that. But what I do like is like using my voice to convey my thoughts and my feelings, like maybe with photos and with
Yeah.
pictures of my work and videos of me doing things. So that's, I think, something that I've decided to focus on now is like, okay, if I'm gonna make content, like let me just make content that I enjoy doing and that doesn't require me to like worry about what I look like.
Yeah.
um because that's a whole nother full-time job is managing that.
Oh, yeah. Well, and I think it's worked for you. I mean, I think you mentioned earlier you like writing, and it sounds like your newsletter is really resonating with people. And that's something I
Mhm.
recommend to everyone. Like, you have to find a way to tell your story, but it doesn't have to be this pre-prescribed, like it is reels and it is me talking to the camera, or it's me, I don't know, dancing around in a dress. It's like
Yeah.
there's no right or wrong way to show up. You just have to find a way to show up in a way that like really tells a story beyond just this is my art, buy it. People really want to connect with you and learn more about you, and that's what you're doing so beautifully with using your voice, and then also using your writing skills, which in its own way is your voice, through your
Yeah.
newsletter. So I think that's a
Yeah.
great just kind of hot tip for content creation.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, well, what do you see next for your business? What's on the horizon? What's year two gonna look like? What are you working on?
So, with it being late October now, I'm most focused now on getting ready for the holidays. So, thankfully, I've begun partnering with a local print shop who's going to print all my prints moving forward, which is great because in market high season, I'm at my printer like 10 hours a week, just
Yeah.
busting out prints. So I'm happy to be able to take that off and start to think, have more time to create again and work on other things. So this season I'll be at this like outdoor kind of like pop-up trailer right in downtown in the town of Melrose, Massachusetts. No idea what to expect, but it's with a cool organization who does like these like mobile pop-ups. So you can like apply to be in that space for, and not necessarily just mobile, but in this case, it is like a trailer basically.
Mhm.
So I'll be um in that space for about a week in November. It'll be outdoors, so like I'm probably gonna freeze and it's gonna be a little challenging, but it's a cool opportunity to just get out there, you know, out and about in the world in the holiday season for 6 days straight, which is will be great. I also have like a full lineup of like weekend holiday markets. So that's really like the biggest thing on my list now is just capitalizing on all of that, which does bring a lot of pressure because as all of us know, like the holiday season tends to be like the most lucrative time. So like taking advantage of all those opportunities is definitely a little stressful, but I feel like, you know, I did so well last year. Now this year my art's even better and I'm better at like merchandising my table and setting things up and getting the word out there. So I feel like although it's stressful and although I feel like it's all going to fall apart, like I know that I'll do better than I did last year, and that's exciting. um What's next for me longer term, I definitely want to build up more commissions. I also recently did like an invitation design recently, just last week, which was like kind of like more like graphic design. It was kind of a test, but I'm very open to finding like different revenue streams. You know, if that means painting some elements for a custom invitation, doing more wedding floral bouquets or commissions in general. Like I just want to put put a bunch of feelers out there for like different opportunities to create custom art. That way I can rely less on in-person markets. I love like data and spreadsheets. So like I said before, I did track like all of my sales, like literally down to every little sale that was made, like where did it come from, what markets were the most successful, what sizes and what prints are doing the best. I just like completely lost my train of thought right there. Oh my god, this is embarrassing.
Oh, you're good. We're talking about what do you see next? And you were talking about all the different ways you were tracking stuff. We also can just cut the tracking stuff part out and circle back.
Yeah, we can circle. Wait, I was like, I just threw that in there, and I'm like, what am I talking about? Anyway, we can cut that out. This is embarrassing. What was I saying? I don't know what I was saying. Sorry.
No, it doesn't matter. Well, I think all of that is great. I think all that stuff is really exciting and you have a really exciting year ahead, and it's fun because I do think really the way this business works is in cycles, and I do think like that year cycle you can pull everything you've learned in this first year and improve next year and improve the next and improve the next. So I think going into year 2 is going to be really exciting for you. So I'm excited to watch it unfold. But I love to conclude every episode with a lesson or a takeaway, tip, something that you can share to the audience that you've learned in your 1 year of business or in previous life career,
Mhm.
that has helped you grow your business or has just kind of helped you as an artist.
Yeah. I think my biggest lesson, I actually like wrote some things down. I just want to reference it because this is like um very like topical for the moment that I'm
Yeah.
in. We can edit this
Oh
pause
yeah.
out.
Take your
I
time.
like I'm like clearly I'm forgetting my train of thought, so I need to like go back to
You
like
are fine.
what I was thinking about. Um okay, so I think the biggest one of the biggest lessons, there's many, but the one that I feel like I would have benefited from hearing a year or two ago, and I think listeners could benefit from, is that for me personally, making art that is really true to my like lived experience and like the things I've seen in the world is the most rewarding way to create. And the reason I say that is because right around the time I quit my job, I was listening to another art podcast from another artist, and she was talking about how on Instagram and in the ecosystem of the internet and Pinterest, so many artists just create based on what they see other artists doing. And it creates this ecosystem where people are all like creating trendy or like commercially relevant art.
Mm-hmm.
And we all when you do that, something that could happen is that you feel depleted because you're not creating what you actually like really want to do.
Mm-hmm.
And you're also, whatever you are creating doesn't really look and feel like those amazing examples you've seen out in the world, and you just feel like you're a failure. And I totally felt that way. I'm like, I'm totally falling into like the algorithm of what I'm seeing online. And sure, I'm not like ripping anyone off, but like I'm totally falling victim to like painting the things that I see out in the world
Right.
that are for sale. And I think that's like fine if you like, I don't want to say that's like a bad thing. I just think it was, for me, it wasn't making me connect really with my art, because sure, I was painting this like one plant that a lot of people were painting, but like, did I really like love that plant? Like, do I really give a shit about that plant? Like
Yeah.
so I went like cold turkey on trying to not be influenced by other artists and what I'm seeing out there, and just create art based on like all my own reference photos. And like if I don't have a reference photo of something that I want to paint, like I'm going to go out and find it. I'm not going to just default to like going to the internet to find a photo of like a peony, like we were talking. Like I'm going to go find a peony
Yeah.
and like go to a flower farm and take photos of it at 50 different angles and kind of study it. And like, again, I don't want to say like that doing it a different way is like wrong. I just felt like, wow, I'm so much more proud of myself when I can create from my own experiences and take my own reference photos and create my own scenes and settings. So I'd say a tip lesson is like, if you're feeling overwhelmed by the ecosystem of like feeling like your art looks like everyone else's or vice versa, like go and create your own art that's like truly authentic to you, which makes it
Mm-hmm.
a lot harder for people to copy you
Yeah.
because they haven't lived that.
I love that advice because I do think that is a problem nowadays, whether intentional or not. Just with social media, it's so easy to be like, all these other things are selling. I should hop on the trend. I want my art to sell, especially when you're new in business and you're just getting your footing and you obviously want to make money too. And it's easy to see what's working for other people or what's going viral or what have you. And so I love that advice that truly, and I think that's a theme on this podcast, like when it comes to finding your voice and your process, if you really stick with what's true to you, your work is going to be better. It's going to be harder to replicate, and it might, not take off day one because it's not trendy, but it'll last long term and it'll build a worthwhile, you know, audience for the long term. So I think that's a great piece of advice.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for coming and chatting with me today. Can you share with the audience your Instagram, your website, all the different ways they can find you?
Yeah. So my business name is Daphne Ray Creative. Daphne's DAPHNERAE, and then the word creative. So DaphneRayCreative.com. And that is my Instagram handle as well.
Awesome. Well, I will link that in the show notes, but thank you so much. This was so fun. I'm so glad we
Yeah.
connected.
Thank you.